Well, all right, all right, all right. Welcome to another episode of Agency Intelligence, where I give you real agents inside real agencies, giving you the real agency intelligence and not the artificial that they try to make you believe out there. Because here we believe the real stuff. We challenge the norms. I think the podcast I released on Sunday, which I normally don't do to all you loyal listeners, was what was it? Remember the truths and challenge the lies. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's something that I had written about a year and a half ago. And I was going through some thoughts, and I'm trying to explain to my new producers some of these lies because I want them to experience the new truth. So I whooped that out, and in the process of doing it, I thought, let me put that on a podcast. So I did. So I hope that you guys enjoyed that. We're continuing on, though. This will be the last episode of the Mom series, which is the Mothers of Mastermind. And as I was just telling our next guest, which is Vonda Copeland, I told her actually it's the month of May, which is MOM. And there's always, the only thing better than one mom is two moms, right? So, but that was pretty cool. It's all a marketing gig. I hope you're getting excited. If anybody was wowed by that name, please let me know at jason@agency-intelligence.com. I always want to hear from you out there. I'll tell you about 2 to 3 emails I get a week, and most of them are positive, but I like those negative ones. I like when you guys yell at me for saying stuff that I wasn't supposed to say. That's the kind of stuff that I really like, because that means I'm making you feel uncomfortable. That means we're growing. You know what I'm talking about? That's what I'm talking about. And we're going to continue to grow. Vonda, welcome to Agency Intelligence. How are you?
I am great, thank you.
Yes. I've had some fantastic mastermind members on for the Mom series. It's only fitting that I don't know how to say it, because I always say things where I put my foot in my mouth, right? But like, you're kind of like the queen bee of the mastermind, right? Like, you're kind of like
The old one?
What?
Sounds like I'm the old one.
No, it's really not, because there are some that are older than you. You know, there are a couple. So that's why I can say that without putting my foot in my mouth.
All right.
But you're like, meaning you're always involved in the conversations. You're always there to say hi. You're always at the meetings. I mean, you literally are one of 20% of the mastermind members that actually email me when they miss a meeting, you know, because they're like, hey, I can't make it, which I love that. The 45 to 55 that we get every month on an average, I love it, so it doesn't matter to me. But that's the way I've always seen you, and that's why whenever I'm glad that we did this later, like Ellie and Michelle and them, I recorded them back in April, but this is only kind of fitting. So thank you very much for being a part of this.
Absolutely. No, I've been able to listen to a lot of them, so, and I learned something every time. Even like the Tuesday, or the second and fourth Tuesday, or Thursdays, it's Thursday. You always learn something, so.
You do. And if you want to be a part of that, we have gained a lot of mastermind members. And when I say a lot, I'd say about 4 or 5 just this last month, which usually we get about 1 or 2. So there's people out there that are starting to loosen up, as you were talking about, while we record this on May 18th at 8:05 in the morning. We were talking just a minute ago about we're kind of seeing a little bit of uptick, like at AIBrainshare.com. Shameless self-promotion, but it's my podcast, so it's not shameless. If you go, we've noticed an uptick on people going to our AI BrainShare page. So just little bitty things since last Thursday, the mandate was released. Now, some people may say, Jason, I don't live my life according to them. That's fine, but businesses do, right? And so it's kind of nice that's kind of been relieved. I will tell you, Vonda, talking about this real quick, you know, this is an exact example of where government doesn't understand business. Like, you just can't come out of a pandemic and just all of a sudden on Thursday go, hey, by the way, everybody, mandate's over. You know what I mean? If you've been vaccinated. And let's really be honest, the people who haven't been vaccinated are those who aren't going to get vaccinated, and they haven't been wanting to wear a mask anyways. So if you really think about it, the mandate's over. But
our mandate just ended Sunday night at midnight, and so we just now had to deal with what do we do with our offices, Now what signs do we put on the door? Because before we had the ones that said, according to ordinance. So I just actually sent an email out yesterday, and I had this huge disclaimer at the top that it was, there's a lot of politics and a lot of personal feelings involved in COVID. And all politics, all personal feelings aside, you all have to remember that we work in risk management. We work with the knowledge that we have to provide a safe work environment. And we have to treat ourselves the same way as we would treat any of our commercial clients who are concerned about what to do with employees and whether they're going to get sued and what they can do and what they can't do. And I actually put in that email that I had conversations with our EPLI attorney before I sent it out. I consulted our EPLI attorney and said, what can I ask? What can I not ask? I considered asking if people were vaccinated or not, and making a list so I knew.
What did he say?
I knew if people, but I ended up not doing it, and I put that in the
what
email
did he
too.
Say, though, Vonda, what did he say? Keep in mind, loyal listeners, she's in the state of Iowa, so it could be different. So
I'm
Vonda,
in Kansas.
Kansas.
Yeah.
What did you? Sorry.
He told me that I could ask, that I had every right to ask, and that I had every right to ask the people that weren't vaccinated to wear masks or to make,
Wow.
make policy based on that. I didn't end up doing that, but at least it was nice to know, because even Jay and I were having this discussion, and Jay's like, you can't ask him that. I don't think you can ask him that. And I'm like, I don't know if I can ask him that. And so it's like, gosh, I pay for the EPLI policy. That's what we tell our customers, call your EPLI. They have all these resources available to them. So I picked up the phone and I called mine, and it was a good conversation that made me feel a lot better of things I could or couldn't do, even though I chose not to do them. Basically, my email boiled down to, guys, we got to have common sense with this. Politics and personal feelings aside, it's common sense, it's common courtesy. We are in a situation where we have to deal with risk management. We have to deal with our customers. We need to walk the walk, talk the talk. And I said, personally, I don't want an employee to have to quarantine for 14 days. Even if they don't get sick, I don't want to have to deal with the quarantines because it interferes with our business. And so that's my bottom line. We've got to do what's best for the business. We've got to do what's best for our teammates. And I just, basically asked everybody to keep that in mind. And I don't really anticipate any issues.
Could the CDC said, hey, in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today, we're good. It's just like they don't get it. Like business, can you imagine Walmart? They say they were blindsided, the Retailers Association. I mean, can you believe they're like, oh my gosh, like we have 1,500 stores that we need, as you said, we need to change signage, we need to get things out. Our people are, the lady's still sitting at the door with the little counter at Walmart, and then we don't need her anymore. We need to break, you know what I mean? It's like Starbucks. So this is interesting. I went into Starbucks yesterday. They told me, and they know me and stuff. I go in there every morning at 6:30, and I said, hey, I said, do I have to wear my mask anymore? And they said, no, you don't, starting today. So I said, okay, no big deal. I am not a person that's for it or against it. I'll just do what I say, not forever, but I'm doing my part right now. And so I go in there today, and they said, Jason, you have to have a mask. And I'm like, well, you told me yesterday I didn't have to have a mask. They said, actually, the local public health, whatever it is, board or whatever, came in here 2 hours after we made that rule and said, it's local ordinance, you have to have masks on, you put that mask on. So now, see, this is the problem we have, right? The public, the local government hasn't even had time to go, crap, And it's like, guys, you got to come out with that a little bit better, Not only that, we're coming out of a pandemic where everybody's had to wear the damn thing for a year, Just goofy as can be. I'll tell you what, these government organizations. But anyways, thank God we live in a country that allows us to have capital enterprise and we can do our own thing. And you can build empires like Miss Vonda and Jay, her husband. Let's not forget, this is a tag team. If you used to watch wrestling back in the day, one wasn't anything without the other. This is the Copeland team. Let's talk a little bit about them. Vonda, you an iPhone, you a Droid user?
iPhone.
Yep.
No question about it. I went to the dark side of the Apple when of course, disclaimer, my favorite phone used to be the Palm Pilot. You know, talk about the
Yeah.
old one. I had two Palm Pilots. I thought they were the best thing ever in the whole world. And so when the iPhone came out, I was all over it. Of course, I love technology anyway.
Mhm.
And so I have the iPhone, I have my Apple Watch, my iPad, you know, my car syncs with it. I mean, I am just in total Apple sync.
Yep. Hey, good for you. I'm serious. I'm serious. And what was the last app you downloaded?
Um, oh, honestly, the last app I downloaded was the Twin Spires, which is the betting app during the Kentucky Derby.
Oh, okay, okay. Did you win?
I did not.
You didn't. You didn't.
No.
Probably
My,
because
my
the other
horse
one
came in
cheated.
third though, and you know the first one's under contention right now. So
Medina, it was what you betted on and took third.
yeah.
Wasn't it Medina Spirit took third? That was the one that's the drugged horse or whatever.
No, the one that won is the one that has the questionable, the Mattress King's horse. That was
Oh, really? I did not know that. I did not.
the
Okay,
one
I'm
that won
sorry.
is the one that's in question now with the testing.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
but yeah, no, mine took third, so maybe he'll get bumped to second when it's all said and done. But,
You know, it's one of those things. This guy either knows the secret to being able to put this medicine in and getting it out, and every once in a while he gets caught, or he's just straight up a cheater, right? It's one. I mean, it's one of those things. Like, but I mean, it's overwhelming how successful he is at this. Let's be honest. And then now we keep getting these.
there's
Dope.
too much money in those things to not have stuff going on.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty
Absolutely.
pragmatic when it comes to that. It's all sports, really. I think
Yeah,
you
yeah.
start getting into the big money sports, and
Yeah,
You know.
it's how the Chiefs win.
hey,
Ah! No, you can't be on one side and then jump on the other. And she says,
True.
"Yes, I can. That's my Chiefs."
true. It is true.
I'm joking. For all you guys out there, I know personally that Vonda's a huge Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
So she's living in her Mecca as, rough year this year. But, overall, gosh, you guys have just turned it around, I got some buddies who are Chiefs fans. My grandma is a huge Chief fan. And I've always thought to myself, like, man, you hate when those people have those teams that don't always win. But over the last 10 years, the Chiefs have been tough, even before they had Mahomes. Okay, sorry. Here, Vonda, we are all over the place. It's like you and I are just sitting on the phone. But sometimes, maybe it's me that's all over the place. I don't know. Anyways, okay, do you love to win or do you hate to lose?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think I love to win because I actually, depending on what it is, I'm pretty competitive. So it's either I'm all in to be competitive or it doesn't matter to me at all. So I think I'm kind of at one extreme or the other. Either it
see
doesn't
that.
matter who wins or it has to be me.
I can see that. I definitely can see that. I definitely can see that. And, yeah. I can see that. And how can I see that, right? Like, I can just tell in your comments. I can tell by the way that you post, how the way you position yourself is so polite, but yet assertive sometimes that, well, here's the way I feel about something. But then also you pass on things that you probably, sometimes we're getting pretty passionate about inside the mastermind. Interesting. So the skill or luck, what got you to where you are?
I would say skill. That's a hard one because you hate to discount one or the other, but not that I don't feel very fortunate in life. I've had a lot of fortunate, a lot of things I'm grateful for, but I think I've also had a lot of things where fate, more than luck, has put me in a position where my skill has either gotten me out of it or helped me make it something, that I wasn't planning on. So I learned to pivot.
I see that. So you say luck was more like a catapult so in some situations off of your skill. That's interesting. I can definitely see that because skill got you to the ball game. And let's talk about that. So did you and Jay, well, let's just do what we do. Take us back to high school, college, and in 3 to 4 minutes, bring us forward to your empire.
Well, I was not part of the empire back then. Jay and I have actually known each other since we were 5. His dad was my dad's insurance agent. And
Wow. Okay.
he was the one that rode along with his dad on Saturday mornings to make appointments with people and would stand in the door, too shy to come into the living room and watch cartoons with me. So, we go way back. But anyway, Jay went into the business early, obviously. When he graduated, within a few days of graduation, he was in the office. I went the education route and taught school for 16 years. And I think if anybody's ever heard me on a podcast before, that I always, would jump in and out as I needed to. If I needed to go down, when Jay first expanded to his first acquisition in Manhattan, I went down, did books, things like that, until we'd have enough money to hire help that I didn't have to do that. And then we'd do something else, and then I'd have to jump in until we had enough money to hire somebody to do that, and then I would back out. And then back in '99, my mom had gotten killed. And so everything just changed really big at that time. We grew up in really small towns. The town where I grew up was like 400 people. The claim to fame is it's the same town that Jordy Nelson, Green Bay Packers, was from.
Okay.
And he lives back here now. And then Jay was just down the road in a town of 800 people. So when you had a tragedy like that, my mom worked in the local bank. She was in the church. She volunteered at the youth center. It was like a community tragedy. It wasn't just my family that lost. It was the whole community. They brought in counselors for the youth center for the kids and just stuff like that. It was just hard to imagine.
Wow.
Just to wrap your head around it. And at the same time that this was going on, the bookkeeper that we had down here in the Manhattan office, her husband got stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Oh my goodness.
So she called me on Friday to tell me about it. And she said, "Can you come to my house tomorrow and I'll show you what things are going on," because we got into a clinical trial in Houston and we leave on Monday. So I went to her house at 6 o'clock on Saturday night, stayed till midnight, got all of her notes, because this was back in October of 2000. She had just put things on QuickBooks back then. We were just now getting everything onto computers, not the green ledgers. Again, old person. Then she left on Monday, and then he passed away 3 months later, and she just never came back. And she called me and said, you just need to be the one that does this. You just need to come back into the agency. And it just seemed to make sense because I was dealing with, the things surrounding my mom's case, which took 4 years to settle. So they didn't have a clue who it was for 4 years. So that was a lot to deal with. And, when you're a teacher, you can't even hardly go to the bathroom, let alone, deal with murder investigations and my dad and helping him out and teaching him how to pay bills and all the stuff that my mom used to do. So it just seemed natural for me to quit teaching, go into the agency, and just be a little bit more flexible with my time. That's kind of an oxymoron now, but anyway. So that's kind of how I got into the agency. And then once I got in there, Jay's very ambitious in that acquisition. Acquisition, I think, is his middle name. And he just started growing and acquiring and hiring. And I was the one, trying to put it all together and merge everything and back behind the scenes. So I'm not the one that can go out there and put a deal on the table, but I can put it together and make it work behind the scenes. So in that case, in that respect, we made a really good team to build what we have today.
So Vonda, when really was it? You said it was around 2001, 2002, you came into the business. And, as we've talked about, you were always in the business. You were just kind of trying to find your roles. You were a teacher, which was awesome. The devastation with mom, and then Jay's out there buying everything, and which I know is as a significant other can probably drive you nuts. I only say that because I drive my wife nuts with that stuff. But yeah, so tell me about it. Like when you first got in, what was your role? What were you doing?
When I first got in, well, actually that first summer, it just hit that, because before I was just doing books at night, so I was the one that, would show up at 5:30 or 5 o'clock in the evening, and I'd work until 10 and then go home. So then I was actually just doing during the day what I used to be doing at night, which was nice, especially with kids. Our kids were, I think...
How many do you have, Vonda?
We have 2. And at
And
the
how old
time,
are
they
they
were
now?
like 15 and 11, when this
Oh,
happened. So they were
goodness
still active, activities going on.
Teenagers.
Watching the calendar and who had to be where what night. But I did a lot with the harvesters that first summer, because right about the time I came into the office, that's when the harvesters were leaving, and you're trying to get all your cab cards to them and everything they need to go to be gone for the next several months. And then I was still doing the books, but only for the Manhattan office. I wasn't doing it for the original office. And then eventually I went into that office and put everything on computer, because we had to switch from everything being done by hand over to putting everything into the computer. QuickBooks, I mean, we already had TAM at the time. Towards the end, we were using TAM, applied TAM, so that was...
When did you say at this time that you're putting things in the computer? Is this about, what do you mean that like you guys are getting rid of filing cabinets at this kind of time, early 2000s?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet. We were doing more of the accounting on the computer to where we had, the QuickBooks program that could go in and keep track of things that way. Getting rid of those green ledgers.
Vonda, real quick, do you still use QuickBooks to this day?
No.
Okay, just curious. You're using your AMS now?
Yeah, we moved over into a system in 2007.
Okay, that's
so
cool.
we used QuickBooks up until 2007.
Makes sense.
So then, we got all of that done and automated, and at that same time, Jay was still in growth mode. The original office was in a town of 800 people, so it was really hard to get company contracts. So really the best way to get a contract for a company to expand your markets was through acquisition. And so we started acquiring, and I don't even know how many acquisitions we've done over the last 20 years.
Now, if you guys are watching on video, you're not really missing anything other than I'm laughing as she talks about Jay. And the reason why is because I know Jay, and he's very straightforward dude, right? That's why I respect him. I mean, this dude will not hold back for anything. Very polite, not rude, but he's going to tell you the way that he thinks. Very involved in seeing new things. That's what I love about Jay at his age. Like, he's not Mr. Squirrel or Mr. Shiny Object, but he has a good knack for saying, hey, that's something that's going to be important. And did Jay always have that, or is that just something that's kind of developed to more?
No, he's always been that way. He's always had that vision. He has this really big picture outlook, and then I'm the one that's trying to figure out, okay, we have to think about this and this and this. I'm the wet blanket that always goes into all these deals and says, okay, and to get an example, we just brought a book of business that we're bringing in, and the guy's already in our office. He's moved in, and I'm like, I just asked Jay this morning, what's the deal? What's the agreement? What are we doing here? He's like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. And he walks out the door, and I know from experience that we will figure it out, but those are the things that drive me crazy, and then I'm the one that drives him crazy by even asking. It's like, why would you even ask that right now? So, anyway, so yeah.
What a special relationship, though.
Yeah,
I had my wife work in my office, so I understand how that can be sometimes.
Yeah,
that's great.
But it is really crazy, and then just because we've done that for all these years, we've done all these acquisitions. Some of them are small, some of them are larger, but just since January 1, we've brought in 7 people into our office, new people. Wow. 2 by acquisition, 3 service people or 2 service people, and then just 2 new producers.
My goodness.
And so,
Vonda,
3 new
let me ask you a
producers.
question real quick. Vonda, real quick. Do you think, what was the cause of that? And were any of those people who had another job pre-pandemic, and now you were able to steal some people? Does that make sense? There's a lot of good talent on the market right now.
There is, but I don't think the pandemic had anything to do with that. I think there's a lot of agencies in flux right now, just as you have a generation of agency owners that are aging, and you have, that pool of people that are in these agencies that when the management changes, it doesn't always go very well. And so I think that's a real key area as far as where we've been able to pick up books of business and people and acquisitions and things like that. But now it's we have people ask us, we have people call us to know, to ask us if we want to acquire them. But now it's
that's
like,
a nice position to be in.
You can look at them at this point, and you basically look at, is it going to help you get maybe a contract that you didn't have before, or is it going to make a difference in a book of business that maybe you get to that next contingency level, or it helps you get to that next contingency level? Because if it doesn't make sense in those areas, then it's really not, maybe not. We're walking away from, I think, a lot more than we used to.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
The other
so
thing
Vonda,
too,
give us that image now. So they have no idea the empire that you and Jay have created. They hear about these acquisitions. I mean, now you have an agency. How many locations?
9.
9, and then you have a brokerage on the side. You guys are really huge in agriculture. Tell us what you look like today, the whole makeup, so they can hear where you've come since 01.
Oh, I don't know. It's changing every day. That's the thing. Or the other part of acquisition is if we're in a new area that we hadn't been before, that we wanted a presence in that area, then that might make sense for an acquisition. Because we have a couple of areas that we're looking at that Jay has his ideas of where he wants to go on the map, and he's going to constantly look at that until we move into that area. But yeah.
I love the guy.
But yeah, we actually, I always look at our agency as it's very community based. So we're all very active in the community. That's just how our agency operates, it's a different model than some. But I always look at it as a wheel. We have our headquarters here in Manhattan, and then we have all of our branches. Everything feeds into the main branch as far as administration. Our personal lines are pretty local as far as having a personal lines person in every office that can support the agents in that office. And that's how, again, we tie into that community-based business. That's the face of our agency in that community. But then our commercial is very centralized. And actually our commercial is really pretty remote right now. And it didn't always, that happened by accident.
Wow,
or fate, luck, skill, fate, whatever. Our first one that started working remotely, I don't even remember. I think she's been remote for maybe 7 years. I'm not even sure. I have to think about how old her daughter is. But she had a death in the family, and it was very unexpected, and her husband moved back to the family farm, so they moved, and she worked for us for 13 years up at that point. She knew all of our stuff. She was trained. She was, Jay's right-hand person, and so we just set up a home office, and she started working remotely. And then a few years later, we had another girl that had been with us for 7 years, got married. Guy got a great job in Nashville, Tennessee, so she works remotely from Nashville.
Gotcha.
So we just kind of went with that model. It kind of worked because anybody in our 9 locations, it doesn't matter if they're calling Manhattan or Nashville. A phone call's a phone call. And so that's kind of how it started. And we added another remote person this year, and it was on purpose because, that way I had the opportunity. I could have moved her to Kansas City office or Topeka office, but I asked her, I said, I'd just rather you work out of your house, because that way you're not tied to a location. Anybody can send stuff to you, and they don't get that mentality that you're associated with one location. So we just kind of went and ran with it. But the thing about the acquisitions and the growth is that you're constantly triaging your agency. You look at it, we call it hair on fire. If you feel like your hair's on fire for like, it just doesn't stop, then we have to have a meeting and we have to figure out, what do we need to do with it? Do we need to shift people around? Do we need to change job descriptions? Do we need to bring in a part-time person? Do we need to bring in a full-time person? We do that all the time.
Vonda, what you're talking about right now is so good. So good when you talk about that, because these are the things that us agents deal with every day, us agency owners, and we think like, is this normal? Is it okay that there's hair on fire? And okay, let's put it out, but now somebody else's hair's on fire. I think we live in this world, I do too, that, once we get that senior account manager, oh yeah, that's it, right? Then we're going to be able to maximize, and then you realize you get them, and it's like, oh wait, I got to move that person. Oh man, now I need to hire another person. And sometimes we feel negative about that as business owners. Like, am I doing the right thing? And to hear you say that, someone of expertise, someone who has experience, I'm not saying you're the best in the world. You'd be the first to admit that. You've made mistakes. But hearing that expertise, it's very comforting to someone who's been an agency owner for 3 or 5 years out there. I know it truly is. So that's really great that you say that. Because it is a triage almost every day, it seems like sometimes.
It is. Well, and you can't bring in an entire book of business, and sometimes we're not even sure the impact it's going to have. And I started something the other day that I thought I would never do, and that's actually I split up one office's business by alphabet in the commercial realm.
Reasoning? Curious.
And I never wanted to do that because, and I know a lot of people do that, not saying anything against it, but I never wanted somebody to call, and the person that's responsible for their alphabet isn't there that day, so then what happens? They need something and nobody's familiar with it. So we've always been, you pick up the call, you help the person. So I did agree. That was in one of our triage meetings. We had a couple of people, one in particular, their hair was on fire terribly. And that was the suggestion. They either said, let's split up the people, the sales force, or let's split up by alphabet. And so I said, okay, I will be willing, even though I really hate this model, I will try it, but at least I'm going to go alphabet and not per people, because that way, if you have the alphabet, you're working with all of them. You're just working with certain accounts for all of them. And that way, if they need something, so-and-so's gone that day, and I need something, and even though this is not your alphabet, you can help me. And so
like
it's, and so I did something I swore I'd never do. And
here you are as a veteran doing something you swore you'd never do. Another
yeah,
great
and
lesson.
it's working, and I always try to put it on my calendar, like whenever I change, and I have to do this because there's just so many things flying every day, because Jay and I do this by ourselves. I mean, we don't have anybody else doing this. I mean, we're taking care of the accounting, the contracts, the licensing. We're doing all the admin on just the two of us. And so I can go from one thing to the next and kind of forget about the thing I just fixed and and just assume everything's going well. So I always try to suspense it out, 2 or 3 weeks. Like yesterday, the alphabet thing, I had it on my calendar yesterday just to say, okay, how is this going? So I emailed out and said, okay, is everything going okay? Is it working? And they came back, saying, yeah, it's working great. I feel so much better. I have less stress, blah, blah, blah. And otherwise I'll forget to ask. My follow-up is not, I go on to the next thing, just like the employees do. So that's what I tell them, set a reminder. I have to do that. And with new people, I do that on new people. We onboard people so much that you forget sometimes that maybe somebody's only been here a couple of months, and you have to check in with them. And so I have to put that on my calendar, check in with Jason today, check in with Melissa today. Otherwise I forget.
Well, it's funny too, this younger generation, when I say that, kids in their 20s, and I say that because I'm 43, kind of say kids now, 40-year-olds just call me a kid. So these younger generation, it's funny, Vonda, I just had this talk with one of my 22-year-olds the other day. He's new, he's only been here for about a month, and whenever he has a reminder or he needs to call somebody or he needs to have an appointment, he doesn't put it in his calendar. He puts it in his iPhone and he sets a reminder. And it's like, okay, that's good, but we need to know. Everybody needs to know. And, he's new. He doesn't understand business. He's a baby. We're trying to get him up there. Ironically enough, it is my son. It's my oldest son. He's 22. So we're trying to, like I told him, I'm not even hiring him for a position. I'm just hiring him so he can get to know how the business works, And it's really funny. He puts everything on his damn reminder. I'm like, Gavin, we have this Office 365. You put it in there. I know, Dad, but I forget to look at that. And it's like, you start to think to yourself, you're like, okay, they need to make an Apple device, an app that they can still do their reminder, but it somehow hooks into their computer and sets a timer on there. Because you sit there and you say, this is the way we do it. But sometimes, what was it that Billy told me the other day? He said sometimes the best way to teach is by the way the person learns best. Now that sounds very common sense, but it's the same type of thing, right? Sometimes we build these processes when it's kind of like everybody's kind of moving like, and I'm not saying that that's not necessary, but it's just funny being aware of what you're talking about, reminders. We put it on our calendars, right? They put it in their phone. Not in their calendar, or in their reminders. Just wild, right?
Yeah, but I have my Google Calendar tied to my phone, so it'll still pop up on my phone, but it still pops up on my Google Calendar. So I think it's a matter of learning how to sync things. And the other thing too is you'll hear me say that the best method of remembering something is what works for you. I have people that will use the suspense out of the AMS management system, and it works for them. Yep. I have some people that you have to look at it though, and kind of like he said, you have to remember to look at it. I have people that set reminders in their Outlook. I have people that set reminders in their phone. I've gotten to the place where I don't care if it works. I just need you to remember what you need to remember and to do what you need to do. And whatever system works for you, if you have to have one system and a backup system, I don't care. We have people that have Google follow-up sheets that they use, and
get the job done.
It's whatever you're going to use. And if I make you use a system that you're not comfortable with and it doesn't fit your habit, it's not going to do any good. And I think that's another point. When we're talking to our employees and we're having these hair on fire, what do we need to do meetings, sometimes they have the best suggestions, but if you're not constantly talking to them, you don't ever know that. And it's just even like where I wasn't comfortable doing that. I hate the alphabet method, but it's working. And so I have to say, okay, they have a good suggestion. I have to get over my, I've always hated that. And see if
it's probably unjustified, right?
And exactly. Yeah, and it's
know.
Working. So, I just have to sometimes get over myself too. But the other thing, this last year, I was on several podcasts, and for the first time ever, and as I was talking about my story as I was going through life and how I got in insurance and the changes that happened, I realized a lot of times it's all about the pivot. And the word pivot has become very important to me because I realize how much it has focused in my life and how it's changed it. When I used to teach school, you'd have kids that, and I still work with a lot of foster kids. I'm on a local foster teen camp board, and I work in the summertime. I'm getting ready to do a couple camps this year.
Doesn't surprise me.
And so when I used to have these students come through, there were some students that rolled with change, and there were some that didn't, like divorce. A kid in divorce. Some of them handled it okay, and some of them just couldn't. And I thought I understood that. But after my mom was killed, it was the first time in my life that I'd had something really tragic happen in life, that it wasn't my fault. I didn't have anything to do with it. I couldn't control it, and yet it changed everything about my life. And I was angry, and all of a sudden I realized how these kids felt when something happened to them that it wasn't their fault, they couldn't control it, but all of a sudden their life was changing forever. And so I understood it, but it's like, how do you get them to where they can get past that? And I never understood, how do you develop this resiliency? And I think I understand it now. I think the real answer to developing resiliency is learning how to pivot. Because when stuff comes at you, you have choices. You can not deal with it. You can crawl in a hole. You can pretend it doesn't exist. Or you can meet it head on and figure out what you're going to do with it. Pivot. And I think that's something that's, when you talk about luck or skill, I think the skill for me is that I know how to pivot. Whatever, and maybe that's just being married to Jay Copeland. I'm not really sure. That could be a lot of it. But seriously, because I've had to pivot a lot, sometimes daily. I mean, he may walk in the door today with something that's going to cause me to do a major pivot. But when you think about it, the better you are at the pivot, everything's got to be better. It's just like I've had this epiphany this year that Carlos Vargas was part of I don't know if you saw the campaign that they were doing to raise money for, kind of like when you were doing the Loyal Listener shirt, they were doing one that said Resilience 2020. And so that just got me thinking about resilience and in the last year. And I really think that the word pivot is key. And in our agencies, you pivot. And I think the people that don't pivot, those are the people that are struggling in their agencies. They're not growing. They're stuck. They're just stuck because they don't want to try to attack the new technology that's coming down the pike. I mean, think about it. Technology causes you to pivot a lot because you have to learn something new and integrate it.
The definition is able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult situations. So boy, does that fit that. It's one of those things that you kind of hear, so you kind of know what it means, but you never really read the definition. As I wrap up here, we have talked a lot about what's happening in the agency. And you and I talked about this 2 or 3 years ago, but we didn't talk about it too in depth. But I believe on David Carruthers' podcast, I think is what it was. It did come out. How was your mother? How did she pass? Let's put it that way. Was there something tragic or whatever that happened?
Yeah. We grew up in a town of 400 people, very small, very tight community. She worked at the local bank, and Y2K in 1999, everybody thought the banks were stockpiling money. Things were going to go wrong at the flip of the switch at the millennium, and so some guy, just targeted that bank to rob, and they targeted the people there. He targeted the people there, and so my mom just lived half a mile out of town. And I guess his plan was to go to her house and kidnap her, and have her help him get into the bank to rob the bank. And so my dad was a retired farmer and drove a school bus at the time. And so he usually left home about 6:30ish in the morning. And apparently the guy was already there by that time, watched my dad leave, because they could tell he was hiding like behind the big 1,000-gallon propane tank. And went to the door like he had car trouble or something to gain access into the house. And then tried to kidnap her to take her to go up to the bank. And I'm not really sure if she just absolutely refused to go, or if she told him it didn't matter anyway because the vault was on a timer. But then he ended up killing her there and then left. So
did he ever rob the bank or anything? I'm just curious.
No, he never got that far, So that was his plan, was to get there and take her up to the bank and have her unlock the vault. So, and they didn't get that far for whatever reason. I'm assuming she shut it down somehow. So, yeah, there was a handful of clues that day, but it was really kind of sparse. He was not from around there. To be quite honest, our police department was was really not very well equipped to deal with something like that. But 4 years later, the guy tried to kill his wife, and he had told her what he'd done, and so she told the police, you can't let him
So
out.
that's how you guys found him 4 years later.
That's how he came out. That's how it came out. Yeah, it was pretty bizarre. So
Sorry about that, Vonda.
Yeah.
It's a weird things that happen early in our life, but we don't need to know those. But as you've gone through life, you've seen how it's really weird that there's good stuff that comes out of bad situations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so to say that in this situation is terrible, but I guarantee you, your mom would be so proud of you. Is your dad still alive?
my dad actually just passed in March.
Oh,
So,
I actually know that.
yeah. Yeah, he
Oh,
hung
yeah,
around
man.
for, 21 years, but
Wow,
But,
fantastic.
yeah.
Well, it sounds like how old was he? Sounds like he lived
he was
a long life.
86.
Oh wow,
He was
goodness gracious.
86.
I'm starting to wonder how the life expectancy is 70, 74, and then it seems like everybody I know is living to 80, 90, 100 years old. Doesn't it seem like that?
Yeah.
It's like you very rarely hear it's like, he passed away. He was 74. You know?
I don't know.
mean, it's like,
Didn't I just hear though that they actually just lowered the life expectancy age?
yes.
I
They
think-
did because of
Yeah.
pandemic and the OxyContin codeine thing mixed together over the last 4 years. Yeah, and everybody's like living so long. I don't even get it. And I don't know what the technology will be like in 50 years. I don't anticipate going out. I've always said, as long as I can go to the bathroom, get up and walk around on my own and feed myself, I'll live for as long as I want. I can, but I got to be able to do those three things.
Well, I've got to hang in there because my son told me that he would take care of me as long as I was okay with one of those automatic water and feeder, that they give animals. So he's, not going to factor big into my plans. So
What he fall off the tree from Jay, I guess. There,
yeah,
I can tell you what.
yeah,
you guys-
low maintenance.
Oh, Vonda, it's been fantastic, and I greatly appreciate you. And we do. We really and truly, you inspire us. Your word gives us passion. The cool thing about it is there's certain agents inside the mastermind that when they speak, we all listen. But then there's some people when they speak, we listen and we try to do. And you're one of those people that we listen to and we try to do. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much, even for you and Jay coming to BrainShare. This year, it's just you. Is Jay coming?
We're both signed up. I hope.
You're both signed
September's
up?
always kind of hard because that's corn harvest, So we'll see. But the plan is to both come.
Well, you're on Champions Action. You're on the board. You should have told me, Jason, quit making this damn thing in September. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing to go. I hope Jay can make it because he's quiet, but he's a hoot when he talks. I tell you that, Jay. Jay cracks me up. And then you had some health struggles with him about, what was that, 3-4 years ago?
Be 3 years on the 25th of this month. Yeah, when
that's
he
right.
had his motorcycle accident.
And I bet you that was scary for you because as we just talked about, all this responsibility, all this vision he has, you probably saw a lot of that going, oh my gosh, I remember that. We weren't as close as we are now.
Yeah.
And I remember you were giving us updates and giving me updates as to what was going on with Jay. And it was unusual because we didn't have the relationship we have now, or I did never met Jay, so, but it's great now meeting you guys and seeing you. So thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
The two last questions that everybody likes to know. You and Jay, he's your boo. You might watch Hulu. Getting the kicks on Netflix, spending your time on Amazon Prime. What are you watching? What do you and Jay watch? At the end of the night, going, you're trying to just zone out. What's your show you watch, Vonda?
I would say the old Westerns channel. He's a big John Wayne fan. And John Wayne, there's the month of May. It's the Dukes. All of his movies are the month of May. So it's been John Wayne all month.
For any of you who are loyal listeners who are new and you're in your 20s, please go to Google and look up John Wayne, the Duke. Right, Vonda? Right? Right? I mean, that's the way it is today.
Oh, no.
My business partner, Travis, he's 33 years old, right? And I'm 43. We're 10 years apart. And he tells me, like, he's going to this concert, right? And he's going to go see Billy Joel. And so he's excited, his in-laws are taking him and all this. And so, like, every time a song would come on, he's like, yep, I'm going to hear him soon. I'm like, Travis, this is Elton John. Travis, this is Elton John. This is not Billy Joel. And so every time there's a piano, he's like, oh, I'm going to hear him. I'm like, All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put on a Billy Joel playlist, and we're just going to listen to it. And before he goes that day, he's like, dude, I had no idea Billy Joel sung all those songs. It was so funny. It's so funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not much older than you, and you don't know who Billy Joel is.
Yeah.
But anyways, go look up the Duke, all you loyal listeners. And then readers are leaders, and leaders are readers, and I know you're a leader, so you must be a reader. What are you reading right now?
I actually just finished a novel that's non-industry. There's an author that I usually read all of his mysteries because he creates characters and then does series. I think it's David Baldacci.
Okay.
I don't know the last name. So I actually just finished reading that. My problem with industry books is I'm really great about reading the first half of the book. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of them. I get all the way to the end without skipping a bunch of pages and then maybe reading the last chapter. I'm really
Why do
bad.
you think?
Pardon?
Why do you think that?
I don't
Why do you
know.
think you
I
do
just
that?
get bored partway through. Not all of them, but I have a bookcase full of them. But I'll start to read through the industry books, and then I'll kind of look at like who I think on our sales force would benefit from that book, and then I'll loan that book out to them. So I try to keep a really, really awesome library. And my son reads because he's got his own business that he does a lot of the same type of marketing with HubSpot and things like that kind of similar to our industry. And so he likes to read a lot of the marketing books that I have. So we're always passing books back and forth. But I really don't read a lot at home. I tried, is it Chris Paradiso that does like the 10 pages a night? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't do that. I did it for 3 days and it didn't work. It was great for 3 days, and after that it's like, I really read more on airplanes. When I get on an airplane, I love to read when I travel. And obviously, when you travel in COVID, you don't get to travel, so I haven't done as much reading, I feel like, this last year as normally I get to.
Makes sense.
Even the industry books, it doesn't matter. To me, I think of an airplane, the first thing I do is, not pack. I check my Kindle to see what books I have so that I make sure I have stuff to read. So
check this out. I was explaining this to my friends the other day, and I guess, I should have known, loyal listeners and Vonda, this is not really kind of a personal thing, but I'll tell you something that I do to read books, and I've done this forever, and I didn't really realize it until lately. So I will always read probably 15 to 20 books a year. And the reason is I only do about 5 or 10 on Audible. But what I have found out is that if I take a book and I put it on the back of my toilet, okay? I know, we're all family here, and I put it there. If I can read 5 to 10 minutes every time, I will finish a book in a month to a month and a half every time. Every time. And so I try to tell that to my producers. I'm like, you're driving 15 minutes to work. Just listen to a book, 15 minutes and 15 back. In 3 weeks, you'll have the book done, And so I've got one, Jeremy, he's actually started to do that. And I know it sounds weird, but it's like Paradiso's 10 pages. When you do it consistently, you really can knock some stuff out. You know what I mean? So people are like, where do you find time to write 15 books? Well, if I had to read 15 books, I don't know if I sit down that much, People don't know it, Vonda, but I sleep 9 to 10 hours at night. I am a very high-driven person, so around 8 o'clock and 7 o'clock, I'm going to bed. And then I wake up at 4 or 5, so I don't have a lot of time to read.
Yeah.
But I try in the morning, but once again, Audible in the car and book on the back of the toilet. It really works well. It really
my drive
works well.
time is podcasts, so that's when I listen to podcasts. Is when it takes me about 20 minutes ish to drive into work, 23 minutes, and if I put a podcast on 1.5 times, then I can, which does not always work on yours, but you guys, the more excited the people get on the podcast, the less works on Eric Garcia's usually. Some of those.
Okay, this is a good feedback here. So you're saying someone who gets more excited in that, you want to listen to it slower.
Yeah. If you listen,
I'm speaking too fast or what?
Pick a podcast where you've gotten really excited, like maybe one where you did with you and Ryan Hanley, and then try to listen to that at 1.5 or 2 times. You have to go back and re-listen to it anyway. You might as well forget it. So But
That's good to know. I'm going to tell that to Ryan.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and I really do. And we are working hard on this insurance network, our insurance podcast network that we're doing. I'm really, really proud of the team for what they're doing. It's a very labor-intensive job. It is twice labor-intensive than it is insurance, by far. I mean, because you have to have so much expertise, and every host always wants 2 or 3 edits, and when you have 20-some hosts, that comes out to 60 edits, you know, and so we're trying to get that under. But we really, really appreciate you coming on and making our network part of what it is. Greatly do appreciate you, our queen bee, and I just wanted to let you know that. And so I was. Well, I'll talk about that some other time. Anything last minute you just want to say, wrapping up?
No, I'm kind of worried that the queen bee fits. I'm not sure about that. I don't have to. Jay's gonna laugh.
You're in charge.
He's gonna
You're in
like, oh my
charge.
gosh, they nailed you. They got it.
What?
So-
Who'd you say you're going to tell it to, Jay?
Jay, yeah, he's gonna like,
Tell
oh
it,
my
tell it.
gosh. So
It just seems that way. You're so knowledgeable. We take very good pride in you, and also
I have a lot of
the other-
opinions. I have a lot of opinions, that's for sure.
You do, and the other women of Mastermind appreciate that. I notice, as you'll notice, the women are a lot smarter than us men in that group, but they're a lot more quiet. So I think when you and some of the other ladies start to talk out, it's like, yeah, okay, you know, put these dumbass guys in their place, you know, because they do. They just talk all kinds of shit. All right, well, Vonda, I do appreciate you. Loyal listeners, I appreciate you as well. You know what I do because I do it for you. I gave you a real agent inside a real agency, giving you the real agency intelligence and not the artificial that they try to make you believe out there. This is Cass. She was Copeland. Don't forget about Jay. We're out.